Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. It's been a while, or been a minute since I've done a recording going on new things. We've had quite a bit, actually. Quick summary on that is developer advocates. We got Uday, Bernard, Segunya, and Alex all helping us and working on things. And have intros, and I think their bios out on our GitHub already with links and stuff. But we'll do some intro recording so everybody knows who they are. I think they're already plugged in the community quite a bit, but we're happy to have them come on board and help our mission. And linking back to that developer advocate program video, this is their whole focus is just to continue doing what they're doing, but also bring that voice back in to make sure our open source policies practice help implement change and work on that social impact to actually make open source efficient. That's kind of like the mainstay. The whole reason we exist, or reason I started here, was so that we could bring Cardano fully into the open source space. And related to that too, we are confirmed to be at the Open Source Summit in Vienna in September, I think 16th to the 18th. I don't even know my timeline anymore with too much travel. Yeah, 16th to 18th is the event. I'll be flying home on the 19th. But if you're there, if you're local, I think we're trying to coordinate a local meetup. Just let us know. We'll actually be at the event and whatnot. But the getting back to the main point, the reason I'm doing today's recording is to actually go over a new initiative we're trying to do, which if you've been in the open source space quite a bit, you might be familiar with the concept of a contribution ladder. There's not so much direct material as to here is what it is, but it's a concept. Basically, it's that user journey story from new contributor to being a maintainer of a project. And there's various avenues in, but the main piece of this is so that you understand a standard framework for how open source projects build up your contributions to the different roles associated. And so I'm trying to make something more concrete within Cardano related to that. And so I've drafted a high level concept based on what I know best practices here and there, but I left it open ended because I really want this to be the opportunity for me to explain my idea, but for the community to come together and tell us what their actual inputs are and how this is more related specific to our Cardano use case. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. 1 second. Okay. Cool. And there's the infinite thing. Okay, there we go. So, what I'm trying to do is enhance Cardano's ecosystem with the contribution ladder. Now, this will definitely be implemented at the Intersect level as a standard journey practice. But it's up to the community if we want to make this the standard across the whole. I'm completely open. Everything I do, obviously, it's open source. You can steal, take it, mend it, whatever you like to do. But basically, a little background is as the ecosystem expands and looking forward, typical MBOs like L and LF, CNCF, that whole best practice thing, they try to build these contribution ladders. That way, there's a standard process to understand what the roles are, progression stages. And if you're looking to try and get work within projects or attain a certain role, it provides you a standard thing to review that helps understand your ascension into those roles. Now, there is the caveat there. Obviously, each project is different and each project has their own governance model. This just increases those chances, i.e., if you wanted to get in a project and you follow this format rather than being lost, it increases your effectiveness of trying to get to that vision. But you obviously have to work with the teams themselves and get onboarded and get recognized in that kind of capacity. That's kind of why I'm doing a contribution ladder, is because we don't have anything set up in that instance right now. And I wanted to give a general framework, and it's a good way for the developer advocates to engage that conversation. But so I'm pulling from several resources here, which is, if y'all may know InnerSource, Salona is a big, one of the big founders behind that, as well as Denise Kirk. I know them both, and it's a really good practice. Basically, InnerSource is taking open source practice methods, but turning it in internal to an IP centric company. But it's the same principles back and forth, so they can be copy and molded. But I really like the way that they laid out the roles and definitions to it. So I do recommend everyone to look at the InterSource Commons website, and I can link that. But i.e., you have your new contributor, and committer, and then the term is trusted committer, i.e., someone who commits the project but is trusted with more responsibilities, and then your core maintainer. And I'll get into the deviations of these rules here in a second. But ideally, a contribution ladder is just a structured guideline, or as the parts of Karen B put, they're more like guidelines. It's not a big, here is the de facto thing, this is how you get to these roles. It just provides you a pathway to understand what these roles are, the criteria typically associated with each, and then how you get to that point. And a high level focus, new contributor, obviously they focus more on small patches documentation. They're getting familiar with the project. As you start to participate more, you become more of a committer, making regular contributions. You have commit access, and you're doing more of like actually resolving issues, things like that, or trying to do PR requests. The trusted committer is a step above that, where you're actually reviewing contributions. You serve as an alternate escalation point for the maintainer in times, and you directly resolve issues. And then obviously the core maintainer, they're kind of oversee the project's direction, sustainability, i.e., they are the ones who typically wrote the source code, or they are someone who was brought on and molded and has that tribal knowledge that no one else typically has. But once again, the example I'm trying to go to here is what I want Intersect to propose, and why I'm doing this is the Kubernetes project. This very much provides a they're like the de facto gold standard in any open source project. But I'm trying to get some of these things put together with Intersect and Cardano as a whole. Whereas if you are a new contributor or someone interested in open source projects, there's a place you can go to. You can understand a standard framework for how everything in the ecosystem should work. My sphere of influence is Intersect, and then we just hope it propagates out. That's why I'm did the developer advocate program. That way we could have that influence back and forth. It's a vice versa ladder. That way I'm not instituting anything the ecosystem doesn't want, and the ecosystem can influence what should be the de facto standard as we work towards these things. But it's helps you understand what contributing means, where you're going with it, and I'm hoping to get something like this built out in the future for Intersect. But having this contribution ladder, coming back to this, is the reason why. And just that caveat is it serves as a standard guideline. Progression to higher end of the ladder depends on working directly with the project, understanding their needs are uniquely different, and may require some deviation to progress. Now, at its core, what I'm hoping to achieve with this is skill development, i.e., a standard pathway to enhance. I'm hoping that we can identify all the different education materials that currently exist, where there's a gap, and map that to this progression ladder. And by going through this process, the idea overall too is 2 projects is that you enhance the overall quality contributions going on. But 3 and 4 are kind of the main thing that I'm going after, which is guidance for new contributors, helping them navigate the technical aspects and how they can integrate and get involved in Cardano, and then sustainable growth, because a lot of projects in Cardano start and then kind of go into a neutral phase, and we're trying to help promote projects. If you're familiar with the project incubation program I'm trying to get up at Intersect, without that being related to all, but that category framework where all projects are in this mature status, where they're up, fully thriving and healthy, and we don't have so many dead or public archive projects. This is to try and provide guidance so projects themselves understand the need for this, and understand the framework in which they operate. And then obviously it aligns with vision, because it promotes decentralized community-driven pieces and helps more community members get involved even with the core code base. obviously, my goals, I won't read too much into this, but strengthening project integrity and sustainability and empowerment and development of contributors. It's more for exec summary. But this is a high level, quick image to understand it. New contributor. Obviously, as you go from left, you're new. As you go right, you're getting more responsibilities, and that's why the box increases. There's a bunch of things associated with this, which is why I'm putting these questions here for the community to help me define, because I need to understand what the transition criteria is. What's the difference between a committer to trusted and trusted to core maintainer, and then what education is already available, what should be required. And the big one is like what constitutes merit, because getting these roles is completely merit based. It's not a networking type thing. It's based on the work that you provide and what you are doing, and that diversifies, right? Because a committer can do a bunch of different like PRs and stuff, but it's also about the quality of the change that you're working. Because like one guy I know personally, he does like one contribution, but that contribution changes the entirety of the project in a good way, whereas some other people that work on it just do small little patch fixes. So there's a difference between that trusted committer and then that committer piece kind of right there. And then what does onboarding look like, and what certifications, if there are any, that we should recognize? Do we do a badge program with this too to help bring recognition to this earned merit system? Honestly, I'm leaving it open. These are just the roles I threw out there. We can redefine them, change them as we want. I'm just pulling from kind of the standard process most organizations use. And then this is draft, so don't I kind of left it as is. These are just initial thoughts. I am happy if they do spur a contentious point of view, because that means you'll want to change it. So I need community buy-in. These are just my high-level additions to it. But for a new contributor, obviously these are people beginning. They're focusing on being familiar. Main activities like reporting bugs, submitting minor fixes, your README needs something, and attending our technical working group calls. The goal is mostly to learn the code base, develop practice, and understand the contribution progress, and then get into the community around the project and try to understand stuff. Um, Acceptance criteria here is really kind of purposeless in some point, but I keep it there so people understand. But the familiarity piece is understanding the project goals, as I was mentioning, engagement, and then submission to adhere to project quality standards. The acceptance criteria to here doesn't really matter, but it's nice to have for people who are not familiar with open source altogether. I want to leave it open for everyone. Give me 1 second. Google thinks, yes, I'm here alone. I'm staying in the call. Thank you. The other piece moving into this is kind of where most people fall in, which is being a committer. You're a regular contribution. You understand the basics of the project and the code base. You do make significant code contributions, sometimes review stuff, give constructive feedback. You're a user of the project typically. You're regularly submitting, so you fall in the regular contribution status. And you work closely with the other contributors to enhance the project. Like there's a lot of people around Plutus that fall into this category, where they're all committers, because Plutus is one of the most active projects we have with community participation. And typically requirements and acceptance criteria, you've demonstrated the ability to make reliable contributions, you're regularly contributing. That's what moves you from a new person to this. Is it's also basic understanding, and you support and guide new people, and help them integrate, but also try to give feedback to the maintainers themselves or trusted committers as to changes needed in the project. Now, the step above this is the trusted committer. We can change the terminology here, but this bringing from InterSource is they're usually highly experienced contributors. They've been in the project for some time. They have that tribal knowledge. They lead significant features or changes, maybe even responsible for one piece of the roadmap itself related to the project. They usually set the example in coding practices, provide some of those templates that are needed, responsible for the READMEs themselves, and ensure the project stays aligned with its goal and best practice. And some basic acceptance criteria as they lead the development of the major features, like I said. actively participate in governance and decision making, and they usually have some influence. Not that that's the best thing. I know our governance model, is trying to get rid of the benevolent dictator, and that's where this becomes a very active part of that equation. And then they're kind of the conflict resolution and that alternate escalation point in case core maintainers aren't there. And then core maintainer, usually these are people responsible for everything to do with the project itself, setting the vision, the roadmap, ensuring sustainability. They define and drive project strategic direction, establish the governance policies, how the project will govern itself, oversee releases, contribute, and foster a strong, engaged community. I.e., these people walk away, the project's typically in trouble. So that's kind of that. But additional considerations with this that I'm thinking about is, even though I'm providing the overall framework, there's other deliverables I want to build out of this. The ladder itself is just the go-to point for getting people familiar with this concept and projects to understand how they operate if they haven't, other than they're just project on GitHub. But there's a key thing to focus on, which is that onboarding and training. And with these roles, you can kind of guide in where these different processes tie in specifically, get more of that project management standpoint. But I want to understand what's available, how do you get introduced to a project from that new contributor point of view, get familiar with it, and then even doing mentorship programs with projects with the trusted committers, if that's a thing that can be mapped out. The second one's documentation resources. I cannot emphasize enough how there is a lack of good documentation in some projects in Cardano. Read our governance policy for the standard framework, but that's something that's needed across the board. A lot of projects focus on development, but not focus on how people can understand their development, how to contribute to their project. So I do want to make that clear, and provide templates, and that's why I got so passionate about getting Cardano, or open source specifically, just because API documentation is lackluster. Um, but yeah, that's what we're here to try and help. And then technical resources, repositories, understanding open source libraries, which, quick plug, I'm starting an open source library working group with the purpose of that being to gather what open source libraries are in Cardano. Not similar to an ecosystem map, but kinda. I just want to know at least something to put on our Intersect Gitbook, what is available, and do a benefits analysis associated with each project. And that way it's also a go-to point for people in the community. And it may be redundant, but I would like to know for my own. I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know a lot. And I do like Cardano Cube and other pieces, but I don't know all the details associated with it. Developer portals also a really nice piece, but I want to do that benefit analysis specifically from a business point of view, that if we want people to build on Cardano, they have a place to go to that understands where these tech stacks they can get started from and help with that. So that's one thing there too. The other thing is community engagement. Now that we have the framework mapped out, assuming that we get there effectively, how can each of these projects understand the community engagement thing? What kind of framework can we set up for best practices associated with that? What can the open source office offer to help bring community events together? And then the next piece to that, which is something I'm passionate about to try and get started, is a recognition and incentives program. I don't know how much we do on the monetary side. That's a whole separate thing. But at least on recognizing people who are actually contributing a lot, and people who are new, and set up like little milestones, things to achieve as you go through. Try to motivate people, because this is where that sustainability factor comes in, about being recognized. What things can you have that shows you have merit, not that that constitutes merit. That's why they're two separate things. But it'd be interesting to see what the community has on that. And then the other things are governance and support. Now that we have a clear description, how do we actually institute this so projects are very familiar with it? We even may amend our governance policy model based on this, but it comes down to projects being able to actually now know how the different aspects associated with the project, how do they map that out? And then this is also, since we have a developer advocate program, our fifth iteration of having these developer advocates connect to the community so we can build these feedback mechanisms and iterate improvement. And this will stem out to the other projects. But I think that's high level, essentially what I'm trying to do. If y'all have any questions or anything like that, please drop in the Discord. We have the developer advocates water cooler. Tex named it, don't blame me. But it's kind of the discussion forum for this going on. So please participate in there or reach out to developer advocates yourselves if you want to. That's Bernard Sabanda, Uday Solanki, Alex Saragan, and Saganya Arun, I think the last name is. Could be wrong. Forgive me if I got it wrong. But yeah, that's our contribution ladder in a nutshell. Please reach out to us. Let us know what you want. If you have any complaints, we got Nagatoshi, we got Tex, and myself. Always happy to take a punch in the face or make someone smile. So, thank y'all again.